Genesis chapter 6, the context. What comes into view? Genesis chapter 6 is there to explain why there's going to be a flood. That's how it begins, okay? Why mankind is going to be destroyed, and the future of mankind will continue through a righteous man named Noah, okay? That's the context. If the first sin that we encounter, if they're angels, then this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Why? Because angels, did they drown in the flood? Were they destroyed? The answer is no, they weren't destroyed. So therefore, it can't be angels, and it isn't angels. As it turns out, in Tanakh, there's an idiom of Havul Hashem beney elim, the sons of the mighty. The word al, I've said this many times in a different context, that the word al means powerful. It's for this reason that in every religion that finds its way back to the Semitic world, God, who is almighty, is called al, ha-elohiym. Try not to say that word unless you're in praying, but I don't want anyone to worship idolatry. And beney Elohim means the sons of the mighty, the sons of the powerful. The people who committed these sins were people, as you said, were the elite, very powerful men. And what did they do? They took women, common women, and they raped them and forced them to have their children. That's it. So there is our encounter with them. These are not angels. If they were angels, then the angels didn't get punished. It's the greatest injustice in the world. The chapter will continue. In English vernacular, we don't talk that way. But in the Jewish scriptures, Moses is called an Elohim in Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. Context, Moses is saying to God in the previous chapter that he is an orel sifosayim. He has a speech impediment. He's unable to speak to Pharaoh. He's not worthy of such a task. And God said, okay, you will be an Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aaron, he'll be a spokesperson. He'll be a Navi. This is all over the place. Havul Hashem beney elim. Beney elim means the sons of the mighty. So what is being conveyed there is that there are people who are very powerful and very mighty, and they exploited women who are very weak and raped them and then forced them to have their children. A problem that is still among us to this day. That's what it means. I'll give you an example. You have this in Psalm 82, where judges are called Elohim. You have it in Exodus chapter 21, where judges are called Elohim. Vatechasreu miyat Elohim. Even Christians should know this because it's quoted in Hebrews 2:7. Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, but the word there is Elohim. The point is, in Tanakh, you have to be very careful about this term, because if you don't know the context, you're going to be in all sorts of trouble. And we, frankly, don't talk this way in our English vernacular, okay? So that's part one. So that's what it's talking about. Not talking about angels. Angels can't rape anybody. Angels can't be evil. Angels do whatever Hashem tells them to do. They have no free will. But the question is, where does it come from? So those who are knowledgeable will know there's a Midrashic source for this where angels come in. It's completely misunderstood. I don't think I ever taught this on air because I don't want to scare people. I'm always afraid that I'll overwhelm with all this information. People will just sort of go blank like a deer in the headlights. So there's a parable. The parable that we're told in our Midrashic literature is that there were angels that had made a case before God. Now, I say this is a parable because it's not to be understood literally, although you're welcome to. You are welcome to do that. But it's not understood that way. Rashi brings this down, and people just don't go back to the original source. My friends, always go back to the primary source, okay? So listen carefully. I'm going to just give you the very short version of this so you'll understand. The parable goes like this. There were angels who had stood before God and said, again, mankind was doing really not very well. aside from Noah, the world was falling apart. And these angels went before God and said, if we would be human and we would be able to come down and be among other humans, we would be successful where others had failed. I'm truncating the story considerably here. In short, God grants them their wish, and they're put on this earth, among others, as humans. And they fail, and they are these beney ha-elohiym. Now, this story did not happen. It's a parable. What's the point of the parable? What's going on? The point is that if you are not created with the breath of Hashem, in b'tselem Elokim, in the image of Hashem, you don't have a chance. If you don't have the resources that Noah had, you will fail. So if an angel could be made human and therefore bypass what we actually saw earlier, my sweethearts, my holy brothers and sisters, dial back to Genesis chapter 5, verse 1, 2, and 3. What do we find there? We find the genealogy of Adam, specifically the genealogy that survived. And what do we find there? That Adam's children were created in the image of Adam. This is not an accident. This is all a play on these words. In fact, I'm going to tell you this, if you come real close, it's very high up there. When exactly did God breathe into our nostrils? Granted that God breathed into the nostrils of Adam, that we see right away in Genesis 1. But to my knowledge, nothing like that happened in my mother's womb or your mother's womb. This is very high. We're going very high now. That's actually addressed in the first few verses of Genesis 5. Many people don't read Genesis 5 because it's a genealogy, and it's a very big loss. The mechanism by which we are created in the image of God, not Jews, every human being, is that we're created in the image of Adam. And Adam is created with the infusion of that breath of God. Got it? Now, my sweet brothers and sisters, listen and go high with me. Listen and go very high. If you open Genesis 5, you'll see that in fact Adam's child is created in the image of Adam. How then are we created in the image of God? God didn't recreate the creation process again with us, but rather we are an exact match for Adam. Adam had Adam v'Chava, and you'll see it, by the way, in the text. Read 5, 1 and 2. Adam and Chava, which means Adam and Eve, are both called Adam. Both. Read it, and fly with Hashem. It's really I'm going very deep here. So if you lose me, you lose me. I hope you won't. So again, how are we created in the image of Hashem? Not directly, Hashem didn't breathe into our nostrils, but rather we are created as an exact replica of Adam. See Genesis chapter 5. Okay. Would angels have been a part of that process? No. And therefore, an angel is not b'tselem Adam. An angel is not created in the image of Adam. He did not receive that. And therefore, there's a Midrash that describes, and this is the way Midrashim convey information through a parable, that there were angels who came before God and said, make us human. If you make us human, we will be able to succeed where man has failed. And Hashem acquiesces to it, just to make a point. And of course, they fail. And that Midrash is not to be taken in a hyperliteral way. Those of you who have even a perfunctory knowledge of Midrashic literature, it's always using parables to convey very complicated ideas. What I did with you, my dear brothers and sisters, is I went swimming with you. I took you through the grand waters of Midrash and understand how to unpack it. So do not allow your mind to be filled with all these silliness that an angel went and had sex with ladies. This didn't happen. If we just play what if, then that would be the grand injustice in the world. Because the angels, they don't need 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen to live. Presumably they could breathe underwater. So it's all silly. As a parable, it's brilliant, because as a parable, we're going into Genesis 5. Now, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, if you've been studying with me for a while, you know that if you don't read a chapter in context, how much trouble are you going to get into? Well, what we've learned together, Kindlech, children of Most High, we get into a lot of trouble. There is a presupposition that if you're reading Genesis 6, you are utterly familiar with Genesis 5. And then you can understand this parable. This parable did not happen, but it's a very powerful parable to convey an extraordinary message that you would have missed if you didn't read 5. One of the things that our sages of blessed memory did was they were able to convey these complicated ideas using the storytelling. Now, I'm not saying to you, it didn't happen. That's what it means. It means great men. And it's just a parable to show that if you weren't created in the image of Adam, who was created in the image of God, you don't have a chance. But we are introduced to, in Genesis 6, who? We're introduced to Noah. And who is he? He was a tzaddik. He was a righteous man in his generation. And in fact, he lived in a horrible generation. So to grow up in a really bad neighborhood and to be a very righteous person, wow, that's really, really amazing.